Why do we live over 40% of our life without our reproductive system? Is you're not just losing a hormone, you're having a massive neurochemical shift. Every woman in her mid 40s or early 40s should go into deep therapy and should start to look at the behaviors that don't work because your brain is ready to let go of those.
Yeah.
That is the purpose of menopause.
Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of the Terri Cole Show. I just had a fascinating conversation with my friend, Dr. Mindy Pelz, who has been on the show before. She's well known for a book called Fast Like a Girl. She's New York Times bestselling author. She's a visionary educator, and she's really a trailblazer in the field of women's health and hormone science. And you know how I love to talk about menopause. Well, her new book is Age Like a Girl, How Menopause Rewires Your Brain for Mental Clarity, Increased Confidence, and Renewed Energy. Which, wow, doesn't that all sound great? It just came out 2 days ago. So we just had a fascinating conversation about how this time in life, so from a scientific point of view, she explains what happens in the brain as our hormones are changing. But what is so hopeful about this book, it is like how menopause, this experience, can be power pivot into the next most empowered time in our lives. And I really believe that as well. And this is, hormone changes, but also it changes your brain. There's so much. And the book itself sort of invites women to transform this menopause experience to their most powerful chapter yet. So we're kind of going from people pleasing to be more purpose-driven in our lives, like less exhaustion, more embodiment, and from silence to leadership. Anyway, I love this conversation. My favorite quote in this conversation I just had with her is, menopause isn't the end of anything, it's the beginning of everything. So I hope that you enjoy this interview with Dr. Mindy Pelz as much as I enjoyed hanging out with her. I am so excited to welcome Dr. Mindy Pelz back to the Terri Cole Show. Dr. Mindy, come on back. How are you?
Thank you for having me. It's funny, I have this long list of podcasts I'm doing, and I saw your name on my calendar today, and I was like, oh, it feels like I'm coming home. I was so looking forward to this.
Right on. You were a repeat guest on the Terri Cole Show, which is not always the case, but we always have a fantastic and fabulous conversation. I love the work that you do, and we have exciting things to talk about because you have a brandy new book that came out 2 days ago. So let's talk about the book, Age Like a Girl, How Menopause Rewires Your Mental Clarity, Increased Confidence, and Renewed Energy. Wow, I literally read the title of the book, and I'm not kidding, man. I literally just went, oh, exactly. Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Is what this is. Like, yes, and I'm so not into and have not been subscribing, even though we'll talk about it. I do hormone replacement therapy and all the things. But this whole subscription of like, best days are behind you, I'm like, fuck that. 100% no. How about the best days are in front? So,
yes.
Tell me about the why this book and why now, and then let's get into it.
Yeah. Well, it's all started, actually, this book's, the research on it started 10 years ago when I watched all my patients that were in their mid and late 40s stumble through their health, injuries that wouldn't heal, moods that were completely off kilter, divorces that were happening, suicidal thoughts that were going on. I was like, why do all the women in my practice who are 45 to 55 having these incredible symptoms? And many of these people I had been working with for years. And so I wanted to answer the question, what's going on? What's the neurochemical change that's going on? And I wanted to answer the question, why do we live over 40% of our life without our reproductive system? Because the body doesn't do anything by mistake. So if we were designed to have a major organ system shut down and still continue on and live decades longer, there's a reason for that. And that's what I wanted to discover.
Oh, please say more about why, because I've had this thought so many times, honestly, like, is it a flaw in the design? Like, why would this be? Is it
Yeah.
just because we're living a million times longer than anticipated? Like, used to be, you only lived to your mid-40s or whenever it was, like
Yeah.
way back in the day. So tell me all the things, please. Let's get into the
Well,
new story for menopause, shall we?
oh my God, I love that. And it ties so well into your work. And the bottom line is that there is a massive neurochemical shift that rewires the brain. And the rewiring of the brain, to make it as simple as possible, is a situation where old neurons are being sloughed away. And I'm just going to call these the people-pleasing neurons. And this, again, ties so well into what what you teach. But all those neurons that kept you addicted to everybody else's opinion of you and kept you addicted to helping everybody else, because then you would feel good about yourself, that really made you look a certain way, diet yourself into the smallest size possible to be lovable, freeze your face and do all this plastic surgery so the culture won't think you're old. Like, all of those neurons are actually starting to go away, and you are growing a new brain, and new neurons are starting to form. And in all the research I did for the book, the most beautiful part about these new neurons is that women were meant to be leaders when we go into our post-menopausal years. We weren't meant to be tossed aside. We were meant to move to a place of leadership. And that's not that's not the menopause conversation that's being had.
But here's the thing. Dr. Mindy, you are on the front line with a bunch of other women that we're friendly with of changing the conversation from an incredibly powerful point of view, because your stuff is so scientific. Like that, it's very helpful. And I think that Tamsin has done a great job of interviewing lots of people for her books. And, there's so many. And then you have people who are popularizing this, like Halle Berry and what's her name? I have her book over here. The other actress who has a book out about it. He used to be married to Liev Schreiber. Anyway, this is menopause. I have no brain cells. But
yeah, right. I was gonna say I kind of remember her name too, but I'm not a pop culture. I'm way out of date with pop culture.
But point is, this conversation is such your book is so timely, because this conversation is it's so ripe. And I feel like I don't know how old you are.
56.
Right. And I'm 61. And it's like coming into menopause and hearing this whole old story of menopause. And first I was like, are you just an egomaniac, Terri? Do you think you're so special it's not going to be you? Or are you willing? I used to always say, kidding, I'm going down swinging, right? Like I would say that kidding.
Right. Yeah.
I stopped saying that because I realized I don't want it to be a fight, right? I want it to be abundant. I want it to be a flow. I want to feel
love that.
good about myself and in my own skin. And I'm not anti-aging. Like I wanted to get away from that whole thing that you said about like the anti-aging stuff. So let's talk a little bit about sort of the evolutionary transition, right, that you write about in the book that shifts energy from reproduction to leadership, wisdom, and creativity. And that is directly from your book.
Yeah. So, I went back when I was trying to answer what's the purpose of menopause. I did what I did with fasting when I was like, why is everybody gaining so much weight and what diet tool did we miss out on? I went back to look at evolutionary biology. And the evolutionary answer is found in something called the grandmother hypothesis. And the grandmother hypothesis doesn't mean you have to be a grandmother. I just always keep putting that out there. But it was a hypothesis that is currently being championed by an anthropologist named Kristen Hawkes that says when a woman, back in the primal days, when a woman stopped her period, the tribe knew her resources were needed now because she didn't have energy going every single month to releasing an egg. Instead, the energy was going back to fitness, cognition, and social leadership. So she was put into another place within the tribe. And while the men were off hunting for food and looking for big animal kills, they would only come back with food like 3% of the time. So it was the grandmother that had to go forage for plants and berries. And what we know from research is she went searching for tubers, which were deep in the ground. And those are like sweet potatoes and sunchokes are some of my favorite tubers. And so she would go on a trek for 7 hours every single day with the other grandmothers to forage for food and bring the food back. And they believe that if it hadn't been for these post-menopausal women, that we actually as a species would have perished. Wow. So in some sense, we're all sitting here right now because of the post-menopausal experience. So when I say you weren't meant to be tossed aside, that is only the patriarch wants to toss us aside.
Yes.
But what we're capable of and our brains are capable of are extraordinary. And that's what we're not talking about.
It's so amazing. It's funny. In my group, in my mastermind and people, there's this theme about women being, I always say, like, you're not optional. Like, you are essential. And like that story, I don't even know about that story, but it's just in my bones. I just feel that it's so true. Yeah. So this shift that you're sort of bringing in the science that backs up this shift that I do see happening socially. It's happening, right? It's just happening.
Yeah, you can
slowly.
Once you look for it, it's like looking for a red car. Once you look for it, you'll see it everywhere. You'll see postmenopausal women doing amazing things.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the neurochemical shift that you write about in the book, about what happens when estrogen declines. Like, how does this affect us?
Yeah. So in this decade-long research, one of the things I found early on was an article that said estrogen stimulated a whole array of neurochemicals. And when I started to research this, it's actually about 12 neurochemicals. So you're not just losing estrogen, but estrogen helped you make dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, GABA, oxytocin, BDNF. It helped regulate your glucose insulin system. It gave you, she gave you collagen and creatine. So I think the first thing we have to realize is you're not just losing a hormone. You're having a massive neurochemical shift, even if you're doing HRT, Yep. And so that massive neurochemical shift is what rewires the brain to start to get rid of those neurons you don't need. The people-pleasing neurons, they're like, peace out. It's no longer, this is what I say, it's no longer neurochemically sticky for us to please you. Like, we don't care because you're not giving us a neurochemical juice. Right. So our people-pleasing goes away, and we start to, I'm just going to say it this way, we start to think for ourselves, and we can't hold back our truth anymore. I don't know about you, Terri, but God, you hang out with me right now, and I'm just like, I got to tell you this. I don't have that filter is not there anymore. I got to tell you what I think. And that's also what we're seeing. But I don't know about you, that was like Freedom Day. It was like, oh, you mean I could just tell everybody what I think? And I don't have to worry about it? This
is exactly the discovery for me around boundaries and around not being codependent, right? Around truth telling. Now, it doesn't have to be mean or caustic, but there's a reality that the bandwidth, right? The changes in the neurochemicals that you're talking about, the way that I experienced it, I think myself, was that the bandwidth just got small for bullshit.
That's right.
Like,
Yes.
I just can't care. And, it's funny, there's this We Do Not Care club.
Yeah.
Right? So you've seen this online?
I have.
And there's like millions of women involved. And it's done kind of tongue in cheek. It's great. But what it represents, I go into those the comment section quite a bit to see what are women experience and how liberating it is to get to a point of, and the way that I described it in Too Much, my second book was about when you're high functioning codependent, and menopause absolutely influences what happens. But it's like you give too many Fs, right, for so long, and then the pendulum swings, and you're like, holy shit, no Fs I can't even nary an F to find. Like, I cannot find any. I do not care. And so there's something really, it's so great to know that science sort of supports this shift, because if there isn't a chemical payoff for us to be so pleasing and so desired, it makes sense. I don't even mean desired. I just mean pleasing, right? That I prioritize how you feel over how I feel. And that doesn't, for me, postmenopausal, I can still compromise. I'm still very loving, and I fucking do what I want.
Right. So I love that. So two things I want to say is that when the We Do Not Care Club came out, I had just turned the manuscript in, and I was like, oh my God, I can neurochemically explain this woman. She hit her point where she didn't have the neurochemicals to hold back. And so she just was like, I don't care anymore. And then all these other women are like, I don't care anymore. And it was like, it needed to be stated, but that's an example of the neurochemical shift. The second thing that I think you've probably studied in your work that is really interesting is I found a research done by Shelley Taylor that proves that women have more oxytocin receptor sites in our amygdala, the fight or flight part of our brain. And so this team of researchers found that women have two stress responses, as opposed to men typically have one. They'll fight or they'll flee. Women also will access a tend and befriend stress response. So here's a hypothesis that I'd love to bounce off your brilliant brain, is I've been thinking that when estrogen goes down, so does your sensitivity to oxytocin. So all of a sudden, we can't do superficiality. We need depth of connection. And if you want to calm us, you can't talk about the weather. You're going to need to talk. This is what I tell my husband all the time. I'm like, you're going to need to talk about your feelings. Yep. We're going to need to go deep into your feelings, and I'll go into my feelings, and my stress will go down. But I can't stay at the surface anymore. So I think this is why we're seeing marriages end, friendships end, because there's sort of a reorganization as we go through this experience of finding oxytocin in different areas than we found it before.
Yep. I think that's absolutely true. The tolerance for talking about nothing, the tolerance for, because really when we think about like polite conversation, so to speak, when that's not really your jam, what you're doing is you're placating, right? I'm managing this conversation. I'm managing you. I want to make sure that you're comfortable and that you're okay with what I'm saying and that we're on the same page and whatever. As I can see this in my therapy clients, women who are post-menopausal, right? We can see, especially post.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's really post that I see it the most. Women in menopause and perimenopause, there's different things that I see. But post, it's, and it's weird. Wayne Dyer said this so many years ago before he passed, but that, in the morning, right, of our lives, we are all about acquisition, right? Like we want to become the doctor. We want to become the therapist. We get the education. We get the kids and the husband and the things. We want to gather things. In the afternoon of your life, and I feel like that's what postmenopausal is we are seeking meaning.
Yeah. It's interesting you say this. I just want to throw out that like we talked about before I came on, I've gotten into this new sport of surfing. It was new to me. And so I'm watching my brain change through the experience. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, I'm happier, I'm calmer. There's something about me being in water. So I picked up the book Blue Water. Have you read it?
I have not.
It's old. It's not a new book. And in it, there's a statistic that I have been marinating on. And basically, it's where happiness comes from. And the author quotes a study that said 50% of happiness comes from genetics, which is interesting. I'm curious what you think of this, that it's a baseline happiness that either you sort of witnessed in your family or you had genes from. 10% comes from your circumstances being right, which is hysterical to me because we all try to get our circumstances right thinking we'll be happy. But 40%, according to the study, 40% of happiness comes from pursuing personal, meaningful activities. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I've spent my whole life on my career and like family, not thinking about what was personally meaningful to me. And 40% of my happiness came from that?
Yes. That to me that tracks so much. And the same thing that you wouldn't think that, because we were taught, especially women, depending on when you were born. I'm 61, so born in the 60s, where there was an opportunity to pursue a career, to not get married young, because I didn't have to, because there wasn't this societal, at least in my family, there wasn't pressure to do so. So I think that I've always been really into pursuing what makes me passionate personally, and people
Wow.
pleasing and doing all the other things. But I would say more than other people, and maybe because I inherited children, so I didn't spend a lot of time birthing and being pregnant. And I think that for women who have birthed children, there's way more time. I mean, I became a bonus mom to young teenage boys, 3 of them.
Oh God.
So like
wow,
12,
did they give you a
14,
manual?
16. No, they didn't. But I was
How
so in
about
love,
some
I didn't
air
care.
freshener? Did you get some air freshener?
Just a nightmare. But you live through, and now, of course, we have 7 grandbabies. So I mean, it all works out. But I think that time, and so for women who have birth children and go through that process, you're getting back your time. Like, think about you're sort of claiming more bandwidth once kids are up and out. And you're perhaps going to be doing a second career. For a lot of women in my groups and my mastermind, they're changing. They are going from acquisition to meaning. They are becoming something else in their lives. But I think that what is required, though, Min, when you think about that study, which I find super brilliant, is what is required is, in order to do that, we need to know ourselves.
That's it. That's it. I tell in the book a story about when I just was having a total breakdown, which was as little as a year. This year, it was like I couldn't do life anymore, because I was a professional people pleaser. I was I should have been given a gold medal in codependency. Yep. And I was just taking care of everybody else's needs. And there just hit a point where I couldn't do it anymore. And my therapist said to me, well, Mindy, what do you want? And do you know, nobody had ever asked me that question. And I had never asked myself that question. And so I sat for she's like, let's create the life you want. What do you want? What do you want? How's this going to look? And I'm like, nobody, I'm a second child. My sister took up all the oxygen in the room. I just learned to stay easy and not ruffle anybody's feathers. Yeah. I became a very obedient mom and wife who had a very successful career. I just took care of everybody. And now I'm 56 and you're asking me what I want? I've never asked myself that. It took me a good 90 days. Every day I would ask, every day I would be like, what do I want to eat? Okay, no, wait, what do I want to eat? Not what does my husband want or anybody else in the house. Yep. What time do I want to go to sleep? Do I want to work out today? Not should I work out today? Nope. Do I want to work out today? And after 90 days of constantly asking myself what I want, I finally am able to put that first.
Wow, but what a beautiful experience and sort of experiment to share. Anybody listening, anybody watching, if you don't know, because Min, this is so common. In my therapy practice, one of the first things I would ask overwrought, exhausted, burnt out women who come into my practice, one question I always ask in the beginning is, what brings you joy? And so much of the time, either there'll be the perfunctory answer, oh, my family, blah, blah. I'm like, no, but not that kind of joy. Like, you, selfish, only you joy. And they would not know. And so I had this whole way of walking people through, how do I even know? I'm like, well, what television shows do you watch? Crazy. What magazines? What would you do for free? When you have free time, how do you spend it? Because that will tell you so much about what you lean towards, whether you watch HGTV or murder mysteries. They're both clues as to what engages you, what enlivens you, what is interesting to you. And it would be a whole process, sometimes a years-long process of self-discovery.
So that is so important for all women to hear, because I think a lot of women put on that sort of plasticized face, like, I got it, I'm all good, I'm fine. But to flip it, it's one thing to say, I do not care. like the I do not care club. But then on the other side of that needs to be the question you just asked, what brings you joy? And I think that once you acknowledge you don't care anymore, then flip that question and ask yourself what brings you joy. And I think 9 out of 10 women, especially as they get through this menopausal process, would be like, I don't know, like you just said.
Yes.
It's scary.
And I also think that part of the I don't care club, right? We do not care club. That's what it is. And Just Being Melanie is you guys, I'll put it in the show notes, but you should go follow her because it's actually very fun.
She's funny.
She's really funny. And she understands. Now, she's in perimenopause, but she's having all of us sort of share what we're going through. And for so long, women couldn't say, it would be like sacrilegious to say you didn't care about everything. Everyone and all the things. And so it feels so good to just be like, but I actually don't care about all the bullshit I used to care. So for me, when I say my part of the We Do Not Care Club is not caring about the things that I used to feel like I had to care about, and that everything had to be perfect, and like all this effort where I pour now effort into knowing myself and prioritizing my comfort, whether it's wherever I am negotiating for what I want, not at the expense of other people, but I'm just not silently suffering because most of the people in my life wouldn't even want me to. So what's right? I just got off a meeting before you and I jumped on with someone, and the guy's microphone, wherever he was, the mic was bad, and it was hard to hear what he was saying. It's an important meeting, and it wasn't being recorded. And I was like, babe, where are you? Because your sound sucks. Can you move? And he was like, oh my God, totally, I'm moving. And then when he moved, it was a million times better. And I said, I just want to be able to hear what you're saying because it's important. And he said, no, thank you so much for saying something. Now, back in the day, I would have just suffered through hearing half of that conversation, making assumptions about what he said. I would have thought it was rude to say that, for my preference. Yeah. And I was like, but that doesn't make sense. We're like we're planning an event together. I need to know what the hell he's saying.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's those little things, I didn't fully tell this side of the story, but in this year when I was in the fires in the Palisades and going through that experience and evacuating from fire for 3 days, I evacuated 3 times. It's crazy. Wow. I was also check this out. I was also leading 100,000 people worldwide through a 3-day water fast. And so the day of the fires, the morning of the Palisades fires, my back canyon was on fire. My neighborhood was filling up with smoke. Cars were rushing out of the canyons, trying to get out as the neighborhood burned. And I tell my husband, I just need to get out of the neighborhood into a parking lot so I can jump on the webinar. The whole neighborhood was on fire. And he's
Literally.
I think we'll be okay without you. And I never made it to the webinar, but I made it out in the neighborhood. And by the end of that week, at the end of coaching these people through this water fast, I said something that liberated me. And I will continue to say this for the rest of my life. I turned to this hundreds of thousands of people and I said, thank you all for putting up with me this week. Many of you have asked me how I'm doing, and I'm going to tell you I'm not okay. Mm-hmm. And it feels really freeing to tell you that I'm really not okay. And I'm going to be okay. I'm going to find okay. But I can't pretend that I'm okay. I just lost my house. 3 months before that, I lost a good friend. And I need to go take care of me now. Mm-hmm. So then what I did, Terri, is I went to my kids. I went to my parents. I went to my sister. And one by one, I said, I have to tell you all I'm not okay. I don't want you to worry about me, but I can't put up the front that I'm okay anymore. Nope. Wow. And that was one of the more freeing things I have ever done. It was so beautiful.
Part of the power of that story, I mean, first of all, I'm sorry about all the things, because that's just so brutal. I know so many people who lost their homes. It's just terrible. Is there was something so powerful and important for you to assert yourself. You could have just made like a blanket email to your family or a blanket, text that was like, it's not going to be like, business as usual. the fact that you went and actually said it, because our healing comes from that assertion. It's not what the person does. Like, some people could be like, well, great, or I don't know, why was I asking too much? Like, people can be fucking weird, who cares, right? Because it's not about their side of the street.
Yeah.
The healing for you, the child within you, and the you who had built a lot of life on self-sacrifice,
Yep.
was like, oh, look, she has our back now. She is standing up for us now. So I can maybe relax. I can maybe heal. I can maybe remember. I can maybe whatever. So I think that the important thing for people listening to know is that changing, like what you did in those conversations, is you changed your dynamic in those relationships by just saying, I need time, or I need help, or I need support. And it's something that, as high functioning codependents, it's the last thing that we ever do. And to do it, you have to be literally on your fucking knees. Like, I cannot get up, like literally. But that's such a beautiful story of healing. So how was it for you after you basically resigned from the over-functioning position that you had been in all these relationships? Then what happened for you?
Well, it was so interesting because then I did something and where I isolated myself. I started off going to my best friend's house, and then I just realized I needed to be away from everybody. I've never done this before, but I was very close to taking a plane and just going somewhere and just letting everybody know, you'll hear from me in 90 days.
Yep.
But I wasn't that brave, but I did find an Airbnb for 4 months, and I wrote this book. And I sat and I just listened to myself, because here was the interesting part, and your therapy brain will resonate with this, is the minute I started standing up for myself, oh my God, the body anxiety, the insomnia, the looping thoughts, like it was almost like I couldn't breathe, the grief. And so I told my husband, I'm like, I need to get out of everybody's way so I don't stop these feelings. I just need to feel them and let them move through me, because this isn't about you. This isn't about the family. This is about my childhood. This is about my whole life, in which I have given myself over to everybody else. Yep. And so for 4 months, I sat isolated in a beautiful Airbnb here in Santa Cruz. I wrote this book, and I only took care of myself for the first time in my life.
Wow.
And it was, and I'm the happiest. Here we are in 10 months from those fires, and I'm the happiest I have ever been in my adult life now, because I went through that process.
Wow. And listen, it's amazing to also be in a family system that, you know, I don't know how your husband was about it, but it's a very bold move to be like, this is what I need to do. So how did he handle it?
Well, I mean, he didn't like it at first because he took it personal.
Of course.
And so I had to keep reminding him it's not personal. I can't regulate my nervous system around you. And we actually went into therapy, and one of the things that we talked about was that's where I was like, I'm a codependent. So the minute you're in the room, I'm trying to regulate my nervous system to make sure you're okay. So if you're angry, then I'm doing cartwheels over here trying to make you happy so that I could stop feeling your anger. Yep. And he would say to me, well, I didn't ask you to do that. I'm like, I know. But so we started having, that's right. I'm like, so we started having better conversations around that. And, you know, luckily my husband was very open to hearing it and to learning. And we eventually got to a point he would tell me, and I write about this in the book, where he would tell me, we would go out to dinner. He would come and see me at my Airbnb, like we were dating again, which was really fun. And he would sit down and he'd say, tell me who you're becoming. Tell me what you're finding. And that was the most helpful piece. This is where I've discovered my father wounds. Yeah. I discovered that my placement in my family was not what, I would always walk around and say, oh, I have such a loving family. And then as I started to unpack that, I was like, wait a second. I have a few feelings about my family growing up. And I just dove into all of that. But this is the beautiful part. I'm 3 years post-menopausal, my brain was ready to let go of these behaviors. And I'm thinking, as you were talking about your clients, I'm like, I feel like every woman in her mid 40s or early 40s should go into deep therapy and should start to look at the behaviors that don't work, because your brain is ready to let go of those.
Yep.
That is the purpose of menopause. You let go of the self-sacrifice,
Yep.
and you move into the self-embrace.
So good. So the last thing I want to ask you about for people, first of all, you guys, the book came out 2 days ago, so you want to go and run to get this book, so that this experience in your life, like these are all the women that we're the women who've come before you, for many of you. And even if you're already through menopause, it's an incredibly inspiring book, but it's something that this can be the power pivot for you, instead of something that makes you feel less than. This beautiful quote from Dr. Mindy that I love, 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 is that menopause isn't the end of anything. It's the beginning of everything.
I love that. I'm like, oh, did I say that? That was good.
You did. And
Yeah.
I want to get a tattoo, because I feel like, and you guys write that down, it's not the end of anything. It's the beginning of everything. That this can be the next best part of your life, but it's our gaze we have to give a shit about. It's how we feel that we have to care about. It's not letting the patriarchy dictate how we feel about aging. I feel grateful about aging. I am happy to not be dead. I want to live for many more decades, at least 2, maybe 3, right? And I think that we are taking it back, and what you've written is a real how-to guide that is so practical, man, because it's not just theory. So the practical toolbox, right, that you share in the book, but just what is in this? It's about food, fasting.
Yeah. So what I did is what I learned with fasting is people want free tools. Like, I don't want to write a book that tells you to go buy a bunch of supplements or spend a lot of money. So I tracked all the behaviors of our primal grandmothers. What did the primal postmenopausal women do? And then I matched that to current science and showed that we should be exercising different. We should be eating different. We should be connecting different. We should look for purpose in new ways. We should be doing things during the day to help our sleep at night. So I tried to look at little micro behaviors that we can do to help assist the neurochemical shift.
Love. And you're so right, because, nobody, we all are busy people. Yeah. So, but we have to sleep. And so better ideas of having better sleep, amazing. I love it. You guys, the book is Age Like a Girl, How Menopause Rewires Your Brain for Mental Clarity, Increased Confidence, and Renewed Energy. It is out and available right now. You can buy it anywhere and everywhere fine books are sold. And Min, where can people find and follow you, Dr. Mindy?
I'm kind of everywhere. And I always, so you just can put my name in there, but I always tell people, because they may not know it, is that YouTube is my passion project. That is where I go and put out 4 to 5 new videos on these kind of topics every single day. So, or every single week. So not day, week. Otherwise I'd be really crazy. But yeah. And so I go live every week. We go live so people can ask me questions. So our YouTube is our real hub.
Awesome. That is your community. Well, thank you. It was so great seeing you. So I'm always so happy to have you on the show. You always add so much value. Thank you for writing this book and being a part of this revolution. I really appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you, Terri. I loved this.
So good.